Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2023. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading. Joining us now is Tom Gillis, Senior Vice President and General Manager, the Security Business Group at Cisco. Tom, thanks for joining us at the News Desk today.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you doing this. We're talking about how to tame today's threat landscape. It's obviously a constantly evolving sort of thing. What threats do you see posing the biggest risk to end user organizations today?
You know, there's a number of different threats, but the one that's sort of in everyone's face is ransomware.
Sure.
And I can tell you from personal experience, I know CISOs at organizations, there's the big high-profile ones, big banks, big defense contractors that have had significant ransomware attacks. But it goes all the way down to the minutia. I have a friend whose family owns a potato chip company in Canada. Like, they make potato chips. They got ransomed. So it shows you these attackers, they have no scruples at all when they're going after our chips, right? Like, it's brutal. In the town that I live in on Cape Cod, there's a ferry to Martha's Vineyard, and it was disrupted for 3 days because of a ransomware attack. Like, so this stuff is everywhere.
Yeah, pretty indiscriminate.
Yeah, pretty indiscriminate, right.
A recent survey that Cisco conducted found that only 15% of organizations are considered ready to defend themselves against cyber risk.
Yeah.
I mean, that is stunningly low.
Yeah, right. I mean, the other way I look at it is 85% say not ready. Now, do you ever feel really ready, right? But I think, you know, we tried to put gradations of what the level of readiness is in there, and the vast majority are saying, like, hey, this is a problem. It ties back to the thing we just talked about earlier. Everyone has deployed, you know, some sort of endpoint solution. Everyone has deployed an NG firewall, right? Like, I don't think I've met a customer that doesn't have these basic security systems in place. Everyone is still getting ransomed.
So anybody with an email, anybody with a website domain,
right?
Basically, you're a target.
You know, I think it's an interesting statement that there's been significant investment in technology and these cutting edge point solutions, and yet ransomware just continues to increase in both frequency and severity. So we got to think differently, right?
I imagine you get this question all the time. What can companies do to better protect themselves against these threats?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's obvious fundamentals, right? We want to make sure that we're thinking holistically about how we prepare here. But I'm going to challenge the listener to think the approach that we've been taking of, I have a problem in security, I buy a point solution to fix that problem. Oh, I have a new problem, I buy another point solution. Oh, that's a new problem, new point solution. Most customers I talk to have 70, 100, I've talked to a customer with 150 different security products in their tool chain. Like, is that working? Like, no, right? Like, so we've got to take a different approach. And I think what we need to do is we need to think about a security platform where I can get more value from a smaller number of solutions.
Well, there's a lot of talk about both vendor consolidation, but also this busting up of the silos that you're referring to here.
Yes.
How do you see this playing out on a day-to-day basis with the customers you're in touch with?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been doing this long enough to know that talk about busting up the silos and vendor consolidation,
it's true,
has been around for decades, right? The thing that's driving it now, it's about security efficacy. If we can demonstrate that a security platform that can look across email, web, the endpoint, and the network, an integrated system across these multiple domains, if that stops ransomware better than the point solutions on their own, the industry is going to move hard in that direction. Because it's easier, it's cheaper, it's more operationally efficient, but security efficacy is first and foremost. And I think we're at a tipping point in the industry where we can show, using like MITRE ATT&CK scores, that this system level approach to security is more effective.
Tom, were there any other surprises from the data in that same survey?
You know, I think it's interesting. We looked across companies big and large. We looked across different geographies. The problems are universal. You'd think that a large customer with, like, you know, hundreds or maybe even thousands of professionals in their IT organization in security would say, we got this thing. But the flip to that is that many of these large customers have significant legacy infrastructure and technical debt. And those are the things that are hard to protect. right? The older systems that are running on older operating systems, and you're afraid to touch it. How do you wrap that thing with love?
Yeah.
That's hard. So I think that tech debt on the high end and maybe lack of talent and finding these people that could do this, lack of skills on the low end are driving the same result.
A typical SOC arsenal consists of things like extended detection and response, multi-factor authentication, endpoint detection and response.
Yeah.
Is this enough of the integrated elements that you were alluding to earlier? Is it sufficiently proactive?
Yeah, so let's double click on that a little bit. So if you walk around the show floor here, virtually every vendor is going to be telling a story kind of like what I told, right? XDR is so clearly important that there's many, many different flavors and permutations of it. Here's our take on it, which is you're going to live in a multi-vendor world. Like that's just how it is, right? We're not going to consolidate onto one vendor. So we have to interoperate with other vendors, and we do. So at Cisco, we advocate for these open AI frameworks, open XDR frameworks, where we build APIs, we build common data models to try to exchange high fidelity telemetry that goes beyond what you'd get out of just log data. But you're never going to be able to replicate the data that you get from what I call native telemetry. So if we're sitting in the data path and we can look at every single email and the headers of those emails and the MIME encoding of the email, we look at every click on the website, we look at every process running on a machine and every packet on the network, that's a huge amount of data. So we're not going to pull all that data back and store it, but if we can process that data and drive conclusions, that's where XDR really, really shines. So I think native telemetry is what is going to make the difference between success and failure in those MITRE scores. And so that leans towards this security platform approach.
I assume that native telemetry is part of the new XDR product that Cisco unveiled today.
Yes.
What are some of the other data points that we should know about that product?
It's really focused on two things. One is the native telemetry, which gives us the high fidelity verdicts, and then an automated response. So we've spent years integrating in with infrastructure to automate the remediation. Now, I think the automated response is a really, really rich area that we have just begun to exploit. So let me walk you through a scenario. We see an email that looks like it's from the Nigerian prince, right? But we're not really sure. But we're like, hey, wait a minute, I think I know that guy. That's not a real guy. But somebody clicks on it because he's so friendly and nice. Someone clicks on it and takes him to a website that we've never seen before, downloads code. We're not going to alert at that point, right? We're not sure that this is a bad thing, but we're going to trigger a snapshot, and we're going to mark that snapshot why we triggered it. Now, all of a sudden, we see a PowerShell script running, and a new process is spawned on this machine.
Okay.
80% of the ransomware attacks that we saw came from an unknown process that spawned out of PowerShell. So you can't just block PowerShell. There's good processes that spawn out of PowerShell. But if you can see this process lineage and connect it to the network, that's an extremely interesting indicator of compromise, right? We're going to trigger a packet capture, and we're going to mark it. And so as we walk through this attack sequence, having this ability to take a graduated response where we're doing things like take snapshots, PCAPs, limit the network segmentation, I believe this time next year, we can come and talk about we have the ability to recover from a ransomware attack with an RPO recovery point of 0. Okay. Which means we can take a snapshot before one line of encrypted data is written. We're not there yet. But when I look at the fundamentals we have, I'm like, I think we can do this. So that's a little bit aspirational, but an exciting direction. The automated response could be so good that it would actually be an antidote to the scourge that is ransomware.
Tom, close us out with some information about how else Cisco is also arming customers with the ability to mitigate and respond to these kinds of threats.
Yeah, identity is a huge part of it, right? And so, passwords alone are no longer effective. And so we need to live in a world of multi-factor authentication. But we fundamentally believe the goal here is to frustrate attackers, not to frustrate users. And so we've built what are almost common sense features into our multi-factor authentication with Duo, where we know when we need to ask you to show that you're you, and when we can quietly step out of the way. We do that in an intelligent, contextual way that creates a really, really good end user experience and better security in the process.
Well, may you frustrate lots and lots of attackers.
That's the goal.
Good luck to you there.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you joining us today on the News
Thanks
Desk.
for having me.
We've been talking with Tom Gillis of Cisco. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. See you next time.